Welcome back to the Car Doctor channel. Here today with a 2002 Ford Exploder. Has some problems in the rear wheel bearing assembly. Upon checking out this car, found that the rear wheel is about ready to fall off. Actually, the right and left rear wheel bearing assemblies are shot. We're going to do rotors, hubs, bearings, and brake pads on both sides on the rear. I'll just use the right rear as an example here, and we'll do a quick video on the procedure to do it. I've acquired all my parts aftermarket, mostly from CarQuest. Got a set of brake pads, rotors, and hub assembly here. And we're going to crank this thing out. So hey, thanks for joining us. I hope this video is helpful. So anyway, first order of business here is to remove the hubcap and get this tire off here. I'm going to go ahead and pull the disc brake caliper by removing the caliper bolts on the back side of this hub. These take a 10 millimeter head. I'm going to try using my 3/8 air ratchet to get them off. I'm going to slightly compress the caliper by using a screwdriver inserted between the rotor and pad face, and then pry back to slightly compress the caliper piston. I'm going to support the caliper by using a little piece of wire to keep it from dangling down on the brake hose and stretching or damaging the brake hose. Now I'm going to remove the rotor by first removing the little keeper deals on the rotor. I'm going to use just a pair of cutters to get these off there. Looks like we're going to need a little more than just hubs and rotors. The parking brake shoes are pretty much trash, so I'll go ahead and order up some parking brake shoes and hardware, and we'll replace those at the same time. Now I'm going to remove the parking brake cable from the rear backing plate area by pulling towards the front of the vehicle on the parking brake housing, depressing the spring while I back it out of the bracket, and then pop the other end of the cable off of the parking brake actuator lever. Now I'm going to remove the hub nut, which is the 32 millimeter nut on the end of the axle. Now I'm going to remove the retaining bolts for the upper and lower ball joint and the radius arm or strut arm on the back side of the knuckle assembly. You may need a hammer and punch to drive these studs out of the knuckle. Now I'm going to remove the ball joints and trailing arm from the knuckle assembly and pull it out of the axle, and hopefully everything comes loose without being rusted. So now I need to press the hub out of the bearing assembly, and in order to press the bearing out of the knuckle assembly. So in order to do that, basically you need a special adapter to secure the knuckle assembly and support it while you press the hub out of the inside of the bearing. Well, one way to do that in this case is to use the old rotor, which I'm replacing anyway, and then cut the center of the hub out. So this surface here of the parking brake drum will actually invert and rest against the knuckle face, and properly support it in a level fashion in order for you to press the hub out of the bearing. If you didn't have a rotor to do this with, you could pound the hub out by using a vise and supporting the knuckle assembly in a vise, but then you're probably going to damage the hub and need to replace it as well. I am using a replacement hub kit with the hub and bearing and snap ring, so I could waste the hub if I needed to, but I'm going to try this. I'm going to cut this out so I have an adapter for the other side, and it'll make this job faster and more efficient. Now I do have a proper adapter for pressing the hubs out of these things. You can see the surface where the press needs to make contact in order to avoid bending the backing plate or other parts of the hub assembly. Now we position our manufactured adapter on the press and position the hub assembly so that the inner hub can be pressed out of the bearing. Now we need to use a pair of inside snap ring pliers to remove the large snap ring which retains the bearing in the knuckle assembly. Then we press the bearing out of the knuckle assembly. I'm going to take this opportunity before I install the replacement hub to install the parking brake shoes. After I replace the parking brake shoes, I support the bearing assembly and hub back in the press and press the replacement hub assembly into the bearing. Now the unit is ready for reinstallation of the vehicle. So we're just going to reverse the removal procedure for reinstallation, torque everything properly. We don't have to bleed any brakes since we didn't open up the hydraulic brake system at all. We're just going to compress the caliper. I'm replacing the little caliper slide hardware, and again the brake pads as well as the rotors.
Torque the lower arm to wheel knuckle bolt at 111 foot-pounds, the upper ball joint to wheel knuckle pinch bolt and nut at 66 foot-pounds torque, the toe link to wheel knuckle pinch bolt and nut to 66 foot-pounds, and the axle wheel nut hub retaining nut to 203 foot-pounds torque. The caliper bolts should have a small amount of blue Loctite put on them and torque to 24 foot-pounds. After you're done installing the tire, lower the vehicle and torque the wheel spindle nut to 203 foot-pounds torque. Torque your wheel lug nuts and you'll be good to go.
You want to get in the vehicle and pump the brake pedal a few times to avoid, throwing it in reverse and having the pedal slam to the floor, because you have to bring those pistons back out to the position where the pad is resting on the rotor. So anyway, that about wraps this repair up. I appreciate you coming by, and good luck with your repairs. Have a good one.